Hi everyone. This is the second part of lesson 1-4 for Algebra 2. We're picking up right here where it talks about percentile. So if you need a second to get that definition copied down, you are welcome to pause the video. Percentile is the item in a data set where a particular percent of data points fall at or below the given item. That is a very clunky definition. So let me try to give you a more concrete example, something that you have actually had experience with. When you take the PSAT, usually I use SAT as an example, not this year, but when you take the PSAT, they typically return your score to you with a percentile rank. If they tell you, for example, that you are at the 78th percentile, that means you scored as well or better than 78% of the people who took that test, okay? So if I'm looking at a data set like this, and I point to this 12 right here, and I want to know what percentile is that 12 at. Really what I want to know is what percent of the data is at or below 12. So percentiles are not about the 12. They're not about the data point itself. They're about the position that that 12 falls in within the data, okay? So looking at this example 1, we're going to still work with this same set of data up here. It says find the percentile rank of 8 in the data set above. Now, I probably did this on purpose, but this data set works really nicely for percentiles because there's 10 data terms in here. Okay, there's 10 of them total. So percentages are going to be really easy to do here. So what I really care about is what position is the 8 in, counting from the bottom. And so counting up from the bottom, this is in the 1, 2, 3, 4th position. Out of 10 terms. Okay, and this right here is really the division that I'm doing. Now I'm going to go ahead and show all of this calculations. I think most of you can look at that and figure out what percentage that would be. But I would really just do 4 divided by 10, which is 0.4. And then since 0.4 is 40%, I would say this is the 40th percentile. So the position of that 8 puts it so that it's higher than, or I guess I should say greater than or equal to 40% of the data. Okay? So let's do the same thing with the 17. Now notice that the 17 repeats. So which one of these do we use? Which position do we use? Well, if we want to be at or below, we want to make sure we include both 17s in our count. So I'm going off of this 17 here, okay? This 17 is in the 8th position, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm going to say the 8th position out of 10 terms. Again, probably don't need to do quite so much writing out with this math, but I want you to have it for reference later. 8 divided by 10 is 0.8, which means that's the 80th percentile. Okay, and so that means if I look at everything that is 17 or less, so that would be all of this, that represents 80% of the data. That's what we're saying when we call it the 80th percentile. You'll notice that in these calculations here, notice I did not use the 8 in this calculation. I did not use the 17 in this calculation. It's all about the position within the data set. Okay? So now let's reverse it. Let me ask you, which term is the 60th percentile? And again, this question is way easier because it's only 10 terms that we're working with. But really the calculation we would do is we would do 0.6 for 60% times the 10 terms, and that equals 6, right? 0.6 times 10 would give you 6. And so what I'm really looking for is the 6th term. And then I do want to actually identify what the 6th term is. So I'm going to count it from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that would be the 15. So 15 is the 60th percentile. Again, you could probably do that one in your head with a lot less writing here, but I wanted you to see what my brain was doing to figure that piece out. If you are working with numbers that are a lot bigger, there's a good chance that when you do this calculation, this is going to not come out so clean, right? We just round. We just go to the closest possible place we can get to, okay? There may be even a rule when you get to AP stats about whether you round up or round down. To be entirely honest, I'm not sure what they look for AP-wise, so I'm just going to tell you to round for now, and that's something that you can clear up next year. Okay, so let's go to an example here. We've got a set of test scores, okay? And first it wants me to find Q1, Q3, and the median. Now, if you wanted to, you could type these all into your calculator and do the one variable stats like we talked about before. Because this data is laid out so nicely in kind of an array and it's all in order, I think finding it by hand is not going to be a big deal. So I have 35 data points here. Okay, 5 times 7 is 35. So let's see, the halfway point would be term number 18, okay, because we'd have 17 on each side, and then the 18th term would be right in the middle. So term 18 is my median. And again, I got that by doing 35 divided by 2, 17.5. So I'm looking for term number 18, okay, for my median. So let's see, this is 5, 10, 15, 16, 17, 18. So here's my median right here. Now, when I go to find the quartiles, if your median is a number in your data set, we don't count that as being part of the lower half or the upper half. So all the calculations we're doing from this point forward, we're kind of leaving that 78 out. So when I go to find my Q1, which would be like the median of this lower half of the data set, I'm only going to here, okay? And that's 5, 10, 15, 16, 17, okay? So again, 17 divided by 2 would give me 8.5. So I'm looking for the 9th term to find my quartile. So here would be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This would be Q1. Okay, I guess I could be labeling these. Q1, median. And then I'm looking for the 9th term starting from here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This right here would be Q3. Okay, so let's see. Q1 equals 71. My median, 78. And Q3 is 89. Okay, so next question. At what percentile does the 89 fall? Now, normally what I would be doing is figuring out what position in the overall data set does that 89 fall in, and then taking that position and dividing by the 35 terms. But I can actually shortcut around that on this one. Because the 89 is my third quartile, I know it's percentile ranking, right? This is supposed to represent 25% of my data up to Q1. This is supposed to represent 25% of my data from Q1 to the median. And then this is supposed to be 25% of my data from the median to Q3. So Q3 should always be the 75th percentile, okay? Because it's the halfway point of the upper half of your data. So it should be the 75th percentile. If we were to calculate it again more formally, let's see, this is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 26, 27. So it's the 27th term out of the 35 terms. And if I do 27 out of 35, whoops. Oh, that is not right. There we go. This actually comes out at like 0.77. Part of that is because we threw this data point out. So if you had called this the 77th percentile, I probably wouldn't fault you for that. But in theory, your Q3 should be your 75th percentile. When your data sets get to be much, much larger, this kind of formal calculation squares up better with the definition of the definition of quartiles. So either one of these answers would be okay with me, but I really am okay if you recognize it as the third quartile. It's just saying it must be the 75th percentile. Okay, what test score is at the 20th percentile? Well, to answer that question, what I want to know is how far do I have to walk before I've walked past 20% of the data? Okay, well, so for that, I'm going to do 0.2 times 35 because there's 35 data points. Okay, 0.2 times 35 is going to give me 7. So what that means is I'm looking for the 7th term. Again, starting from the bottom. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This guy right here is my 20th percentile. Now notice there are two 70s here. So technically the 70s percentile ranking would be a little bit higher than 20, but percentiles can be a little bit of a rough estimate. That's okay with me. So the 7th term would be 70. If you scored a 70% on this test, you scored as well or better than 20% of the kids in your class. Okay, that's what we're saying here. Okay, let's see. And then finally, the middle 50% of the students scored between what two scores? If you go back to that box and whisker plot that we talked about on the last page, the middle 50%, that's what's defined by quartile 1 and quartile 3. Okay, so the middle 50% scored between quartile 1, which is 71, and quartile 3, which is 89. So the middle half of my students fell in this range here, between 71 and 89. Okay, I'm going to call it quits on this one. We'll pick up with one more short video on how to calculate outliers, and that'll kind of pull the first half and the second half together. And then you'll have an assignment to work through with this material. So, thank you for watching.